You see me clapping for you. You don't know how excited I am. Wow.
Well, well,
That's it. Tell me about that first. I'm sorry. I mean, tell me about that. Then we can talk about today's meeting.
first of all, I followed your the steps that you showed me and the steps that I read from your book.
I can't hear
So
you well. Hold on. Okay. Hold on.
can you
It's
hear
from
me
my
now?
end. I can hear you loud and clear. Mm-hmm.
So there are two things. I applied to this university. First of
Okay.
all, I sent my application and then they set up an interview for myself and two professors, which I have done.
Okay.
For
Mm-hmm.
my own part, I think it went successful. And I think I was able to convince them why they should allow me to study at their university. But they
Mm-hmm.
promised to get back to me. In fact, the last thing they said to me was I should just send my degree certificate and one more recommendation letter. So I think that
Okay.
was a good indication because
Mm-hmm.
if they were not considering to take me, they wouldn't ask for any more
Mm-hmm.
certificates. So that
Mm-hmm.
was one. But I also uh, followed your steps to contact professors.
Mm-hmm.
So I contacted this professor because I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do MSc in environmental engineering. So I
Okay.
followed your step. Even though it's not an American college, I contacted the professor. And
Mm-hmm.
after about 4 days, another professor, I think he shared my details with the university because that's what
Mm-hmm.
the other professor, even though I've also read about that professor that emailed me because they are lecturing at the same school. But
Mm-hmm.
the one that I sent the email to was the head of programs, and
Mm-hmm.
I think he was the boss. He's still the boss, Professor Simon Pollard. So he
Mm-hmm.
shared my details with other lecturers, Dr. Ima Boton. So
Okay.
Dr. Ima Boton messaged me. She sent me an email telling me
Mm-hmm.
whether I have interest to study for a
Mm-hmm.
PhD. So
Mm-hmm.
even though I made it clear that I wanted to masters, but I replied him like PhD, and I was like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
So that one was, but she told me that Professor Simon Pollard, whom I initially emailed, shared my
Mm-hmm.
details.
Mm-hmm.
So that is why she was trying to reach out to me
Okay.
to let me know whether I still have interest so that we can, yeah. But she mentioned
Okay. Okay.
PhD, and if I know, um, it's possible to go straight from PhD to from undergraduate to PhD. I was a bit
Mm-hmm.
taken aback too, and I have not replied to her yet because you
Mm-hmm.
told me to wait so that we talk about it. So that
Okay.
is where I am right now.
So first of all, you know why I was shouting and clapping and shouting and excited? You were listening to
No,
Brock. I was hearing Bob Proctor's voice in the background, right?
really.
Yes. I
Okay.
was so excited, right? Like I was like, oh, what's this dude listening to? You know? Well, let's face the most important thing, and then you tell me how or why or how come you're listening to Bob Proctor. So, to answer your question, I think you're doing the right thing. And the second thing I want to say is you need to understand that people go from masters to people go from doing first degree to doing a PhD.
Yes, ma'am.
There is a student in a department here in my school who is on a master on a who came in after a first degree, and guess what? This student is in a PhD. So there
Wow.
are doctoral programs that are designed in a way that allows you to earn a master's degree and a PhD along the line. But of course, you are admitted for a PhD. So while doing the PhD, they would award you a master's degree, and at the end of the whole program, you're getting a PhD. Does that make sense?
Wow, it does.
Yes. So the school that you're in touch with and several other schools have that kind of plan whereby you reach out to them, you only have a first degree, you're not coming to do a master's, you get enrolled to do a PhD. And so you would earn if what we will say a master's certificate and a PhD certificate at the end of the day. So you don't have to
Wow.
do masters and then do PhD. I was only talking to you the last time we chatted based on the questions you had. So now that
Yeah.
some other things are coming up, it makes sense to say, okay, yes, at this stage, you should open your mind to those other options and know that it is not only the school that you're in touch with. So regarding the feedback you should give them, let me look at your email again, the one you shared with me. Okay, so now in your response to this person, I think since you already established conversation, I don't think there's need for you to dance around anything or start making up some very good story about how you finished this, how you are now doing this, and all of that. So, what I would recommend is simply follow this formula. I'll say the PCG formula. What is your personal story? What is your communal story, and then what is the global objective? So now that this person is willing to meet with you via Zoom or Skype or whatever means, make sure that your network is doing well. That one that your network will be dancing Makosa. Please, let's try to. If you have to climb the see, if you have to climb the tree. Oh, the good thing is change your background. Do you know Zoom allows you to like change your background? Okay,
Yeah.
look at me for instance. As we're in this meeting, if I want to change my background, I can actually change it. I can actually change it to, look at what I'm doing now. I've changed my background. You won't see all this, let me see if I can do that.
It's
Has
changed.
it changed? It's not changing at my end. But again, I'm just saying that it is possible to change your background. That's the point I'm trying to make. So just know that it is really important that you, you know, in reaching out to this professor now, since there's already an established rapport, you don't need to say much beyond what is this person's research interest and how does your own interest align with this person's interest. Frame a story that is not more than one paragraph around that, and then you can request to meet with this person. So what I see here is so now, before you respond to this email, now that they are saying if it is you're interested in a PhD, go to this person's website. This person happens to be a professor in that program, right?
Yes.
Good. Now visit the person's
I, I
website.
had I had already researched about
Good.
almost all the professors in that program.
Good.
So the
Good.
person that replied me, in fact, I mentioned her name to the professor that first emailed when I sent my letter of introduction
Mm-hmm.
that she could be a possible advisor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So
I know a
makes
little
sense.
bit about her, even though I will
So
do further research.
mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, with what you know, okay, sorry, with what you know, what I'm going to say is simply, follow up by saying you're willing to meet and you're open to have a chat so day no, don't give a day, just simply keep it open and say, okay, you're willing to work with this person's schedule, you want to know the person's availability, and you're willing to have a chat. Now, since you did not get a chance to really explain what you're looking to do with them with this person in the email, you have to prepare for that like the virtual interaction. So what you did not do in your email, which is the outstanding letter of introduction framing, is what you're going to be doing with your mouth. And what will you do with your mouth? I'll just share three things before we log out because of time. So the first thing you would think about, that I want you to think about, is your personal story. The second thing is your communal story. The third thing is your global story. These things you know already. At least you have bought my book. But
Yeah.
sometimes people forget things, right? So, personal, why are you going for this program? Oh, my great grandfather fell from Iroko tree. Oh, I'm just saying, and then you then
Yeah.
decided that, oh, or my mother, our house used to leak, like the roof of our house used to leak growing up, or mosquito was what killed my great grandfather, like you need to tell don't go and lie, or tell a real story and share a personal story. So when I say personal, the personal can be your own story, which is personal. It can be, it can be relational, as in someone you know. It can be situational, something you saw or witnessed. Okay. So yes, for me, my personal story, every time I talk about my research interest is, oh, I was a victim of domestic violence and abuse. I grew up in a family where being left-handed was, shamed. I was abused for being left-handed. Being a child of a single parent, I was, stigmatized. I grew up, in a community where women are marginalized. So my entire life, God, is a story, So personal story, that's it. So you move from your personal story in just two sentences. Tell us about your communal story. So if you're speaking to this person, what you would have said in two, three sentences in your writing is what you will say in two sentences verbally, like you will verbalize your statements. Okay, make it very brief. These people, they don't really have time, so they want you to get their point across to them, boom, as soon as possible. Then quickly transition to then say, okay, when having gone through this, you realize that there was a problem, and the problem is that a lot of people are victims of domestic violence, that a lot of companies come to Africa, build infrastructures, and then they destroy, the farmlands, or colonize, landed properties. I am just giving different examples of the problem. So you go from that personal story to now establishing, okay, what then is the problem? Why should I care? So why you should care is the fact that a lot of people, for instance, are victims of domestic abuse and violence, and because of the way in which our reality of abuse is, if someone is not hitting you or beating you up, the person is not abusing you. So I can say that the problem that has caused me to want to do research with a certain professor is not just because the professor is interested in domestic abuse and violence, because of an underlying problem. And so that problem here is me saying that even though I have experienced this, there are a lot of women, a lot of men out there who are victims of this kind of abuse. So I am not just saying it is me. I'm not being narcissistic about the idea. I'm being communal by saying that, okay, this is my problem. This is our problem. A lot of people are struggling with this reality. And then I go to then talk about the communal, which is that not is not be only me waka come, we plenty, we're many, a lot of us are going through this. And then I end by saying, globally, what is the world, what is what do we how do we position this as far as the things that the United Nations is is interested in? So the world is plagued by several issues, or the world is struggling with several things, among which is stigma, inequality. And I think SDG 10 has to do with reduced inequality. Okay, reduced inequality. So if we have more opportunities, equity, equality, or whatever we call it, more women or more men will be able to speak up. More people of color might be able to say, no, this is wrong, I'm going through this is not done. So I can then conclude by saying that after looking at my interest, after looking at your work, dear professor, whatever, and I haven't thought about the implication of this even in the lives of everyday people. And more importantly, the fact that this is such an important problem for the United Nations, the world. United Nations is like all the world come together saying that these are our problems. So if you can then pitch your idea and position it within one of the SDG goals, then you know what you're talking about, right? And that is that's the essence of research. So what is your research if it does not translate to, making lives better, influencing or informing, or informing policy or policies? How do you really, like, how do we know what you're doing really makes sense? So this is my own way of framing whatever, however you want to go about, sharing that idea with that professor when you're meeting with that one. And this same thought process or pattern should be what you follow even in the other emails, which I believe you're going to be sending to other professors. So try to send out emails to other schools. And what else? I think that's basically all. So, yes, I've answered question one. There are many more programs out there that would take you from you coming from an undergraduate program to going into a PhD direct and then getting a master's along the way. Two, there are a lot of programs out there that would also allow you, how do I put this? That would, yeah, well, I think I've answered the first one. And then two, if since you didn't get a chance to write your story, be prepared to verbalize it, think about it. If you think well about it and you're able to answer the three questions, personal, common, and global, and then conclude by saying, this is what this professor is doing, this is what I want to do. It does not exactly have to be the same thing word for word. What makes you different from the professor is, yes, you have your unique idea. Don't go and act like you're being beggarly, or, oh, you're saying, I don't have my own idea. It's just your idea, sir. No, they don't want that. They want you to be able to say, okay, I have seen where your work intersects with mine. So, like, let's say there's a professor that I want to reach out to whose work is on, you know, maybe trauma from childhood trauma. Childhood trauma has something to do with domestic violence. People who are victims or who suffer trauma and have not been able to heal from that trauma are most likely going to be insecure, toxic. And when they are insecure and toxic people, they are most likely going to be violent. And if they're violent, they'll be aggressive, abusive. And of course, that would affect whosoever it is they're interacting with, whether friends, siblings, or even intimate partners. So I can look at the fact that that professor is interested in childhood trauma and link it back to my interest in domestic violence. I can look at the fact that this professor is interested in parenting and link it back to domestic violence, because if a child is not well parented, the child can become toxic and abusive and become violent. And a violent child can become a violent youth, a violent youth can become a violent adult, and a violent adult can become a violent partner. So that is a narrative. So you need to go, like, if you don't reflect on this, and this reflection might not take you more than 30, 40 minutes. It's not like an entire day or a 1 week activity. So it's just for you to be like, get a plain sheet as you leave this meeting today. Get a plain sheet, do a rough mind map, and say, okay, this is what I want. This is my personal story. This is the communal story. This is the global story. This is what this professor is working on. How do all of these things, how do they meet? Like, where do they meet? And when you know where they meet, then that's your area, that's your interest. So it makes it even, you sound more convincing when you're saying, oh, this is what I want to do. This is why I'm doing this. Like, they wake you up from sleep and then you're speaking in tongues because you know what you're looking for, right? You know what you're aiming for, and you can vibrate with that energy.
That is true. So now my next question.
Mhm,
I told you I have already done interview, right,
mhm.
with two professors. So
Okay.
they are also from the same school, but the interview I for MSc, but it's not the professors that have been in.
Okay.
So is it Is it if I still have the interview for the PhD position, even after having one for the masters?
You can go for both interviews, right? Do you understand? But wait, is it the same department
Yeah,
or different departments?
yes.
The same departments.
Same department. Yeah.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. But if they ask you what do you want? Do you want the master's or the PhD? Your question should be, I am interested in any path that will allow you time to be able to learn as much as possible and become fully prepared for that field. So don't go sounding like I want master's or I want PhD. Sound like you are interested in any path that would allow you to develop all the skills you need to develop, okay, so that you can become
Okay.
excellent in that area. I don't know if that answers your question. Let me see if there's anyone else. I think there was someone who. Yeah, did I answer your question? Did I answer your question?
You answered it perfectly, ma.
Okay.
So now,
Please don't use now for
obvi-
me. My name is
you answered it
Bisola-Mariam.
perfectly. So now, no, no problem. Now, I am not to take the SCT exams anymore. In fact, the deadline was today. So I pretended that I forgot. So I will
Okay.
not take SCT exams anymore. So
Mhm.
now, obviously, I cannot pay for PhD for myself. So
Okay.
maybe in the interview, they will ask or they will ask me whether I want to ask a question. So is it okay if I ask them or I
Absolutely.
cannot fund the
Like,
PhD for myself or ask whether there are
absolutely.
any financial?
Mhm. So before you go into that interview,
Okay.
one of the things you want to check is, are you done talking?
Yes.
So before you go into the interview, one of the things you want to check is be sure that the school or the program has funding. So you don't go and waste your time at an interview when you know that this school does not have funding, or you rather spend your time searching for schools that have funding. However, another way this can play out is even if the program does not have funding, the professor himself or herself might have funding. Do you understand? So if the
Yes,
professor
ma'am.
particularly has funding, it helps. So if the professor has funding, it means that you can leverage on what the professor has, which is the funding the professor has. And if you're able to leverage on that, it helps you or makes it easy for you to, get what you're looking for. And what you're looking for is what is to, get fully funded. So don't, go ahead. I mean, go ahead for this interview. But moving forward, two things you want to do is visit the website, check what is available online, like as far as the school or the program is concerned. Do they offer assistantship or scholarships? And lastly, I think what you're doing is, see, you're putting the cart before the horse, or which one is the wrong way, when everything, so you have set all your plate, yet you have not even cooked the rice, right? So what you're doing is the wrong way, but we're just trying to remedy this approach. But for every other school you would ever reach out to, make your email comprehensive. Watch my past videos if you've never watched them, or if you have been watching a little and running away, go back to those videos. And most importantly, take time to really look at the book. Maybe sometime soon the updated version will be coming up, but right now I'm not even stressing myself with reworking or reviewing the book, because I know that a lot of people will buy books, they will do nothing. So I don't even want to stress myself until I know I have the time and I'm ready to update those books. So the available information, use them well. So go ahead for this interview, ask them the question about funding, but moving forward, make sure that you send a detailed email that also does these three things in three different paragraphs. Paragraph one, talk about your personal, communal, and global story that I've explained. Paragraph two, talk about how that story and the experience you know, how that story aligns with what you studied in school. And even if the story does not align with what you studied in school, tell us what happened in your academic journey in the second paragraph that prompted you to now want to do that program. So, for example, if I share in my story that I was abused, I was this, and in my community, a lot of people are struggling, with this, and I've looked at the SDG goals, and I think I want to do something that contributes to reduced inequality. I have said this PCG in those few sentences, and then I move on to say, after when I started schooling, or when I got to college, I was a student in the humanities, but I have, in all of my extracurricular activities, I saw that I was gravitating towards things that revolve around inequality, marginalization, and abuse. For instance, I had volunteered for this organization, I've done this, I've done that. Or if you took courses, you could just go ahead and say, when I got to college, I took courses that, or borrowed courses, or my department had this type of courses. So how did these things, go from your story to really shaping your interest logically? And then tell us what you have found in what the
Yes, ma'am.
professor is doing, and share that as well. When you go from sharing what the professor is doing and how your academic or your extracurricular activities helped you to shape your research interest and why you think this professor is the best person for you, go to the third paragraph and ask questions. So these type of questions that you're going to be asking in person ideally are the type of questions you should put in your email, so that when you're meeting, they are just getting to put a face to the email. Because not all professors that are interested in working with you will
No
begin by
problem,
first
ma'am.
meeting. So the first thing they may want to do is to want you to send everything via email, and then after which they will chat with you. So that's it. I guess that's your last question, right? So we can call it a day.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're welcome.
I
So yeah,
appreciate.
are you done with all your questions now? Are you done with all your questions? I can't hear you.
Yes, for now.
Okay, great. So, lastly, I wanted to say something, but I forgot. Yeah, I had a question for you. I heard that you were listening to Bob Proctor. Did you hear me?
It was actually I had it was actually outside close to the to the street. So you
The
overheard.
street, I can't hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now. So, what did you say?
The question again.
So, I'm saying, what were you listening to? What were you listening to when you jumped on the call?
It was outside. They were playing it outside.
Wow.
My house is close to the to the street. Yes.
The streets?
That Yeah, the street. Like
Wow.
we have a street here. We have vehicles regularly, so
But that's
that's
great
why.
content, Like when I heard the voice, I was like, this is Bob Proctor speaking. Wherever that was coming from, that was good content, good vibration. In my head, I was like, maybe you were the one playing it, and I was busy clapping for you. Maybe I should take all my
And I
claps
enjoyed
back.
it. No, 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 don't do that.
Can you imagine? You enjoyed it. Okay. Oh yeah, go now. Go and start listening to Bob Proctor. You should start listening to him then.
No, no problem.
All right then. Take care.
Thank you
I'll
so
see
much,
you
man.
some other time. And I see that you are not forthcoming in
Okay,
the
man.
inner circle. So I guess I have kicked you out. You were supposed to turn in your
Please don't kick
assignment.
me out.
No, 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 no. You were supposed to turn in your assignment for the Clarity of Vision 2022,
Before
but
you have to get, I did not. I did
you
not
know what?
start. So you have to get me up
Follow
to
up with
speed
the
so
group
that I.
members. Follow up with the
Okay.
group members. Follow up with the
I
group
will. I
members.
will ask Busola
Busola, yeah.
and
So try to know what they're doing, and if you can catch up, you still have now
Gordon.
till March 31. But if you are not able to catch up, you only get to see my green lights occasionally when I have this type of meeting. So thank you for your time, and have a great weekend.
I will. I will catch up.
Yeah, please do. Take care. Bye.
Man. Okay.
Okay, so that's it for today. Alrighty. So, okay. Okay, so I'm going to end this stream and then we move on to something else.